There's a reason so many people over 50 wake up with that quiet stiffness in their knees, that faint ache in the fingers that wasn't there yesterday, that subtle grind when bending to tie a shoe or reaching for a pan. Most shrug it off as age. They assume it's normal, just part of getting older. But what if I told you that for many people the pain in their joints has less to do with time and more to do with what's sitting on their dinner plate? It sounds almost unbelievable at first. After all, we've been taught that vegetables are nature's gift, that they heal, nourish, and protect. And while that's true for many, some of the most common vegetables Americans eat daily can quietly erode the cartilage cushion between your bones, trigger chronic inflammation, and accelerate the very pain you're trying to avoid. You may have even eaten one of them today, thinking you were doing the right thing. But the truth is, after 50, the body changes in subtle but powerful ways. Hormones shift, the gut barrier weakens, the immune system becomes more reactive. What once was a harmless salad can become a spark that ignites inflammation throughout the joints. This is not a scare tactic. It's physiology, it's chemistry, and it's something that thousands of people discover too late after years of silent damage. Let's start where the problem truly begins, the gut. Because before inflammation ever reaches your knees, hips, or shoulders, it begins deep in the digestive tract. Inside the gut lives a delicate ecosystem, trillions of bacteria working together to digest, absorb, and protect. When this balance is disrupted by certain plant compounds, like lectins or oxalates found in specific vegetables, the lining of the gut becomes porous, allowing microscopic food particles to leak into the bloodstream. The immune system sees those particles as invaders and launches a defense. That defense is inflammation. And the joints, rich in connective tissue and sensitive immune receptors, become collateral damage. Imagine it. You think you're fueling your body with healthy vegetables, but inside your immune system is quietly waging war against your own tissues. The knees swell, the fingers stiffen, the lower back aches in the morning. The doctors call it arthritis, you call it aging. But it's often the body's cry for relief. Now, you might be wondering, how can a vegetable, something natural, plant-based and full of fiber, do such harm? The answer lies in the plant's own survival strategy. You see, plants can't run away from predators. They can't fight, bite, or hide. So they evolved chemical defenses, natural compounds designed to deter insects and animals from eating them. These defenses are subtle but effective. When consumed in small amounts by a young, resilient body, they're easily neutralized by stomach acids and enzymes. But when digestion slows with age, when stomach acid weakens, and when the intestinal barrier becomes thin, those same compounds begin to accumulate and irritate the system. It's like adding fuel to a low-burning fire every day. Over time, that fire spreads. You start to feel it when you stand up after sitting too long, when you grip a doorknob, when you climb the stairs. And yet, because these changes are gradual, most people never suspect their diet. They treat the pain with pills, creams, or injections, but the source remains, quietly simmering in their daily meals. One of the most common culprits are vegetables high in oxalates, compounds that bind to calcium and form sharp crystals. These crystals can lodge in the kidneys, forming stones, but they can also circulate through the bloodstream, embedding in joints and connective tissue. Spinach, for example, often praised as a superfood, is one of the richest sources of oxalates. When eaten frequently by someone over 50, especially with a sluggish digestive system or reduced kidney filtration, it can silently deposit these needle-like crystals into the joints. The result? Chronic stiffness that no amount of stretching or supplements can fully relieve. Another group of vegetables contains lectins, proteins that attach to the lining of the gut and interfere with nutrient absorption. Nightshade vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, and eggplants are notorious for this. They contain compounds such as solanine and capsaicin, which can trigger inflammation in susceptible individuals. For someone with a strong immune system, the effect might be minor. But for someone whose gut barrier is already compromised, these vegetables can become inflammatory accelerants. The irony is painful. The very foods people add to their diets for health, the colorful peppers, the fresh tomatoes, the spinach smoothies, can sometimes be the reason their joints hurt more after eating healthy than they did when eating poorly. It's not about fear, it's about awareness. Because once you understand how your body changes with age, you can make better choices that protect your joints rather than harm them. At 50, cartilage regeneration slows dramatically. The cells responsible for maintaining that cushion between your bones, the chondrocytes, lose efficiency. Inflammation acts like rust on metal, wearing down what little cushioning remains. The more the immune system is provoked by certain foods, the faster the deterioration. Picture your knee joint as two smooth stones gliding effortlessly against each other, separated by a soft layer of fluid and cartilage. That's what youth feels like, movement without friction. But introduce inflammation, and the fluid thickens, the cartilage erodes, and the stones begin to grind. Every step becomes a reminder of the body's inner imbalance. You might not see it on an X-ray yet, but your body feels it long before doctors can diagnose it, and the vegetables you've been told to eat more of could be quietly accelerating that process if they're the wrong kind for your current physiology. Science has long known that compounds like solanine and oxalate can irritate the synovial membrane, the thin layer that lines the inside of your joints. When that membrane becomes inflamed, it releases cytokines, small signaling molecules that attract immune cells. These immune cells flood the joint, breaking down tissue in an attempt to repair what they think is an injury. But there is no injury, only irritation. The result is a self-perpetuating cycle. Inflammation begets more inflammation. Pain signals intensify, the cartilage thins, the bone underneath becomes exposed, and all the while, you might be wondering why your anti-inflammatory medication works less and less each month. That's the cruel part of hidden dietary inflammation. It doesn't just attack one joint, it slowly poisons the entire system. You may feel it in the fingers one week, the knees the next, and eventually in the hips and shoulders. It migrates, confuses, and exhausts you. But the truth remains simple. What enters the body daily determines how it feels. Now, not everyone reacts the same way. Genetics, metabolism, gut health, and even stress levels play a role. Some people can eat nightshades their entire life with no pain at all. Others, especially those over 50 with joint issues, may find dramatic relief within weeks of reducing or eliminating them. That's how powerful diet can be. The body speaks, through pain, stiffness, and fatigue, long before it breaks down completely. And listening to that voice, especially after 50, becomes the difference between slow decline and lasting vitality. It's worth reflecting on how modern agriculture has changed the vegetables we eat. The tomatoes in your grocery store today are not the same as the ones your grandparents grew in their backyard. They've been bred for size, color, and shelf life, not digestibility. Their lectin content has increased, and the skin, once thinner, is now tougher and harder to break down. Combine that with an aging digestive system, and you have a perfect storm for inflammation. So when someone says, "But I've eaten tomatoes all my life," the real question is, have you eaten these tomatoes? The same applies to potatoes, once a staple, now often sprayed, modified, and stored in ways that increase their glycoalkaloid content, another compound linked to inflammation and nerve irritation. After 50, the body's detoxification pathways slow. The liver works harder to clear these compounds, but the system becomes backed up. The result? More toxins circulate in the bloodstream, and joints, with their slow circulation, become easy targets for deposition. That's why joint pain often lingers so long. The blood flow there is minimal. Once inflammation sets in, it's difficult to flush out. What's fascinating is that the same vegetables can be transformed from harmful to healing simply by changing how they're prepared. Boiling, peeling, or fermenting can dramatically reduce lectins and oxalates. But most people don't know that. They eat raw spinach in salads or blend it into smoothies thinking it's pure health, not realizing that they're delivering an unfiltered chemical cocktail directly to their bloodstream. Cooking methods matter more after 50 than ever before, because your digestive resilience is not what it once was. The enzymes, stomach acid, and bile output that used to protect you have declined by as much as 40%. That's not failure. That's biology. The solution isn't to fear vegetables, but to respect them, To understand which ones nourish you and which ones, in excess or in the wrong form, may be causing harm. Most doctors never talk about this connection. They see the joint pain, prescribe medication, and move on. But as a physician who has spent years studying inflammation, I can tell you that the body's symptoms are never random. They are signals, precise, meaningful, and logical. When your joints ache after certain meals, it's not coincidence, it's communication. And once you learn to listen, you'll realize that your body has been trying to tell you the truth all along. There's one more reason vegetables can turn against you as you age, and it has to do with your immune system's memory. Over decades, the immune system learns to identify and attack certain molecular patterns. Some of these patterns found in vegetables mimic those on your own cartilage cells, a phenomenon called molecular mimicry. In simpler terms, your body mistakes parts of your joints for food particles and attacks them. This is one of the mechanisms believed to underlie autoimmune arthritis, and for people genetically predisposed, exposure to these plant proteins can tip the balance. The tragedy is that no one warns them. They just feel like their body has betrayed them, when in truth, it's reacting exactly as it was trained to. But knowledge is power. Understanding this means you can make adjustments, changes that give your immune system peace again. Because joint pain is not inevitable. It's not a life sentence. It's a feedback signal, one that can fade when the right foods enter and the wrong ones leave. The first step is awareness, the realization that age is not the enemy, ignorance is. Once you see how deeply food interacts with your biology, everything changes. Meals stop being routine and become medicine. You begin to notice that the days you avoid certain vegetables, your hands feel looser, your steps lighter. The morning stiffness lasts minutes instead of hours. You wake up not feeling young again, but free. The journey to joint health after 50 begins with curiosity. It starts with asking questions no one else asks. Could this pain be something I'm eating? Could my healthy diet be silently turning against me? These questions don't create fear, they create freedom. Because when you know, you can act. And when you act, you heal. For now, just hold on to this truth. Your body is not broken. It's communicating. The foods that served you once may not serve you now. And that's not your fault. It's just the natural evolution of being human. The key is to listen. Before the whisper of pain becomes a permanent voice, the danger hides in plain sight. It's sitting quietly in the grocery cart, lying in the produce aisle under perfect lighting, and simmering on dinner tables every night across America. Most people would never suspect that the same vegetables they buy in the name of health could be chipping away at their mobility, one meal at a time. And yet, that's exactly what's happening for millions over 50. The reason isn't a myth, nor is it alarmist. It's biochemical. It begins with a misunderstanding we've been taught for decades, that all vegetables are universally safe and healing. The truth, however, is more nuanced. Every plant produces compounds designed for self-preservation, and some of those compounds, when consumed frequently by aging bodies, become irritants instead of allies. Let's start with the nightshade family, a group of vegetables that includes tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, and peppers. They look harmless, vibrant, colorful, even appetizing. But within their skins and seeds lie alkaloids, natural chemicals like solanine and capsaicin that plants use to defend themselves from insects. In young, healthy individuals, these compounds are typically neutralized in digestion. But in people over 50, digestion slows, stomach acid decreases, and the intestinal lining becomes thinner. What once passed unnoticed now seeps through that weakened barrier, setting off a cascade of inflammation. The body, believing it's under attack, mobilizes the immune system. White blood cells rush to the joints, releasing cytokines, the same inflammatory messengers involved in arthritis. The knees swell, the fingers throb, the back stiffens. You might not link it to dinner, but the connection is real. Imagine you enjoy a beautiful garden salad, crisp lettuce, diced tomatoes, a handful of bell peppers, maybe some roasted potatoes later in the evening. On the surface, that sounds like the perfect clean meal. But beneath that, if your system is sensitive, you've just introduced several compounds that irritate your joints. Solanine from the potatoes, capsaicin and lectins from the peppers, tomatine from the tomatoes, each one a tiny spark. Individually, they may seem harmless, but eaten daily, as so many do, they accumulate. That's why joint pain often feels unpredictable. It flares without warning, some days good, some bad, but it's not random, as it's cumulative inflammation. For those with osteoarthritis or rheumatoid tendencies, nightshades can intensify the immune response dramatically. Studies have shown that glycoalkaloids like solanine interfere with mitochondrial membranes, the energy factories inside your cells, leading to oxidative stress. Over time, oxidative stress erodes cartilage and stiffens ligaments. It's a slow, invisible erosion. You don't feel it happening until it's too late. And because these vegetables are marketed as heart-healthy or low-calorie, people eat more of them than ever. The irony is devastating. In trying to eat better, many are unknowingly worsening their pain. But nightshades aren't the only culprits. There's another group just as sneaky: the oxalate-heavy vegetables. These include spinach, beet greens, Swiss chard, rhubarb, and even almonds when eaten excessively. Oxalates bind with calcium in your bloodstream, forming insoluble crystals. You've probably heard of oxalates in the context of kidney stones, but few realize they can also embed in the joints, tendons, and soft tissues. Think of them as microscopic shards, invisible yet sharp. When they deposit in the joint capsule, they irritate nerve endings and draw immune cells like magnets. The inflammation that follows feels identical to arthritis. The catch is that most doctors never test for oxalate buildup in joints. They only look for it in urine. That's why so many people are told their pain is idiopathic, meaning without known cause, when in reality, it's dietary. What makes oxalate accumulation worse after 50 is the decline in the body's natural detox capacity. The liver, kidneys, and lymphatic system all work more slowly. Dehydration, common in older adults, concentrates oxalates even further. Add calcium supplements or certain vitamin C products that convert to oxalates in the body, and you've created the perfect storm for crystal formation. People often think they're doing good by drinking green smoothies loaded with spinach and beet greens, unaware that they're saturating their system with oxalates their kidneys can no longer handle. Then, weeks later, the hips begin to ache. The knees swell after sitting too long. The fingers stiffen on cool mornings. They assume it's aging, but it's chemistry. The truth about oxalates is particularly sobering. They don't leave the body easily. Once embedded, they can take months to dissolve, even with proper diet changes, and when the body begins to eliminate them, symptoms can temporarily worsen, a phenomenon called oxalate dumping. This is why so many people give up when they try to eat cleaner and feel worse before they feel better. They misinterpret detox as decline, but what's happening is that the body is finally clearing years of silent accumulation. Now, there's another vegetable group that deserves careful attention: legumes, particularly soybeans and lentils. They're often considered a protein-rich alternative to meat, but they're also dense in lectins, sticky proteins that bind to the lining of the intestines. Lectins can cause microtears in the gut wall, allowing food particles and bacterial fragments to leak into the bloodstream. This leaky gut effect turns the immune system hyperreactive, fueling inflammation that targets the joints. After 50, when your gut lining has naturally thinned and stomach acid is reduced, lectins become more potent irritants. The result isn't immediate. It's gradual, almost deceptive. A little bloating, some fatigue, then over time, that unmistakable morning stiffness sets in. Lectins don't just irritate the gut, they also mimic certain joint proteins. The immune system, once confused, begins attacking both, a process called molecular mimicry. This is one of the underlying mechanisms behind autoimmune joint conditions. It's the reason someone can develop new joint pain later in life without injury. And because lectins are heat-resistant, ordinary cooking doesn't always destroy them completely. That's why soaking, fermenting, or pressure cooking legumes is so important, methods most people no longer use. The convenience of modern cooking has come at a cost. When you combine these factors, nightshades, oxalates, lectins, the result is a perfect inflammatory storm. And for someone over 50 whose metabolism, detox organs, and gut barrier are already under strain, Even moderate exposure can cause disproportionate harm. What's worse is that this inflammation doesn't just stop at the joints. It can travel systemically, affecting blood vessels, skin, and even brain chemistry. That's why people with joint pain often describe brain fog or fatigue. They're both symptoms of the same underlying immune overactivation. The tragedy is that most people over 50 genuinely want to do the right thing. They're told to eat more vegetables, so they do. They replace red meat with lentils, add spinach to smoothies, load up on salads with tomatoes and peppers. They follow every health magazine headline. But no one tells them that their body at 50 is not the same as it was at 30. The enzymes are weaker, the gut microbiome is less diverse, and the tissues are more sensitive to inflammatory mediators. The same diet that worked beautifully 20 years ago can now quietly sabotage their mobility. Let's pause and imagine a real-life example. A 62-year-old woman named Linda, determined to stay healthy after her husband's heart surgery, switches to a Mediterranean diet. Every morning she drinks a spinach smoothie with almond milk, eats roasted potatoes with olive oil at lunch, and enjoys a colorful dinner with eggplant and tomatoes. She feels virtuous, proud. But within 6 months, her joints begin to ache. First her fingers, then her knees. She assumes it's just part of aging. She buys supplements, glucosamine, turmeric, omega-3s. They help, but only a little. Her doctor prescribes anti-inflammatories. Still, the stiffness persists. It's not until she meets a nutritionist who understands oxalate and lectin sensitivity that things change. The nutritionist removes spinach, potatoes, and nightshades from her meals, replaces them with steamed zucchini, carrots, and leafy greens like kale and arugula. Within 3 weeks, the morning stiffness is nearly gone. After 3 months, she can garden again without pain. The difference wasn't medicine, it was awareness. This story is far from rare. Countless men and women live through the same cycle: pain, pills, confusion. They chase relief but rarely look at what's right in front of them, the foods on their plate. And the reason isn't ignorance, it's trust. We trust the labels that say superfood. We trust the headlines that glorify green smoothies. We trust without question that if something is plant-based, it must be safe. But the human body is not a static machine. It changes, adapts, and becomes more sensitive with age. What's healing at 30 can be harmful at 60 if the gut barrier weakens, if oxalates accumulate, or if the immune system becomes hypervigilant. And then there's the influence of modern agriculture. The vegetables of today are not the vegetables of a generation ago. Soil depletion has reduced mineral balance, while genetic selection has increased plant defense compounds to protect yields from pests. That means higher concentrations of lectins, oxalates, and glycoalkaloids than ever before. In other words, the chemical defenses that used to protect plants in nature are now protecting industrial crops, but harming human health. The shift is subtle but significant. So when someone says, "But my grandmother ate tomatoes every day," they're not wrong, they're just missing the context. The tomatoes she ate contained a fraction of the inflammatory compounds found in the ones we eat today, and she didn't blend them raw into smoothies or eat them year-round. She ate them seasonally, often peeled and cooked, practices that reduced their harm naturally. Let's talk about potatoes for a moment. They're a staple in many households, yet they're one of the richest sources of solanine, a glycoalkaloid known to irritate nerve endings and joint tissue. When potatoes are stored improperly, exposed to light or warmth, their solanine content increases dramatically. That's why green-tinged potatoes are particularly dangerous. Most people don't realize that even small amounts of solanine can cause stiffness, muscle pain, and inflammation when eaten frequently. Fried or roasted potatoes, because of their skin exposure, retain more solanine than boiled or peeled ones. And for someone over 50 with slower detoxification, that buildup can become chronic. If you find that your joints ache more after eating fries or baked potatoes, that's not coincidence. It's chemistry at work. Now consider peppers, another beloved vegetable in American kitchens. Red, green, and yellow peppers contain capsaicin, the compound responsible for their heat. In small doses, capsaicin can reduce pain by depleting substance P, a pain neurotransmitter. But chronic exposure, especially through diet, can have the opposite effect, stimulating nerve endings and increasing inflammation in sensitive tissues. For people already struggling with arthritis, peppers can act as both friend and foe, soothing short-term but worsening the underlying inflammation long-term. It's a cruel paradox. Even the humble tomato, often hailed as a symbol of heart health, carries hidden risks. Its seeds and skin are particularly high in lectins and tomatine. Many people experience relief from joint pain simply by switching to peeled, de-seeded, and cooked tomatoes. Proof that the preparation matters as much as the food itself. But because raw salads and cold tomato juices are fashionable health trends, the problem continues unnoticed. Each glass of raw tomato juice becomes a small dose of inflammation. You might wonder, if these vegetables can be harmful, why aren't they causing problems in everyone? The answer lies in the immune threshold. Every person has a tolerance limit, the amount of irritation their body can handle before symptoms appear. That threshold is determined by genetics, past infections, gut microbiome diversity, and cumulative exposure. For some, the limit is high. For others, especially those with autoimmune histories or years of processed food consumption, it's low. After 50, the threshold drops even further because the repair mechanisms that once buffered inflammation begin to weaken. Collagen production declines, cartilage renewal slows, and antioxidant defenses wane. That's why joint problems seem to suddenly appear. They're not sudden, they're cumulative. To truly understand the risk, think of your joints as a bank account. Every day, inflammation makes a small withdrawal. Each time you eat inflammatory foods, you lose a little more cushioning. For decades, you don't notice. But one day, the balance hits zero, and that's when pain becomes constant. The goal then isn't just to stop withdrawals, it's to start making deposits again through healing foods, hydration, and movement. But first, the leak must be sealed. And that leak begins in the gut, through the vegetables that silently open the floodgates of inflammation. What science is now uncovering is astonishing. Researchers have found that people with arthritis have higher antibodies against certain plant lectins, meaning their immune systems are literally tagging those food molecules as threats. They've also detected oxalate crystals in joint fluid samples of chronic pain patients. These findings validate what many functional medicine doctors have known for years. Joint pain isn't just mechanical, it's metabolic. It's an inflammatory dialogue between food and tissue. Understanding this doesn't mean you must fear vegetables. It means you must personalize them. Because the real danger isn't the vegetable itself. It's the mismatch between your body's current needs and what you're feeding it. And after 50, that mismatch becomes more likely if you don't adapt. In the next phase, we'll explore what happens inside the body when these vegetables are consumed regularly, the cellular drama beneath the pain. You'll see how inflammation travels, how it reshapes cartilage and nerve signals, and why certain people feel it more intensely. Because when you understand the internal story, the solution becomes clear. What happens inside the body when these vegetables are eaten isn't visible in the mirror. You can't see it in the reflection of your morning routine, the cup of coffee, the bowl of spinach, the crisp bell pepper on your plate. But it's there, quietly shaping your day from the inside out. It begins deep within your bloodstream, in the smallest capillaries, where every heartbeat pushes nutrients, oxygen, and microscopic messengers through a landscape of tissue that never rests. Your joints, those hinges of life, depend on perfect harmony in this microscopic world. Every movement, from lifting a fork to taking a step, requires smooth coordination between bone, cartilage, synovial fluid, and connective tissue. When that harmony breaks, when inflammation enters the scene, what used to feel effortless begins to ache, grind, and resist. Imagine your knee joint for a moment. It's not just a mechanical hinge, it's a living, breathing ecosystem. Between the bones lies a cushion of cartilage, spongy, hydrated, and flexible. Surrounding it is synovial fluid, a clear, viscous liquid that lubricates every motion. This fluid is constantly renewed by the synovial membrane, a thin lining rich in blood vessels and immune cells. When you eat something that triggers inflammation, like lectin-heavy or oxalate-rich vegetables, those immune cells become soldiers in the wrong battle. They sense a threat that doesn't exist. They release cytokines, chemical messengers that call for backup, more immune cells, more inflammatory molecules. What begins as a local irritation becomes a systemic reaction. The joint swells, pressure builds, and enzymes are released that break down collagen and proteoglycans, the very fibers that give cartilage its strength. Inside this process, the beauty of the body's design becomes both its gift and its curse. It's designed to protect you. Every inflammatory response is an attempt to heal. But when the trigger is constant, when every meal reignites the fire, healing never completes. The immune system becomes trapped in a feedback loop, a cycle of defense that destroys what it's trying to save. And because cartilage lacks direct blood flow, it heals painfully slow. Once damaged, it may take years to regenerate, if it ever does. That's why joint pain persists, why it flares even after rest, and why it seems immune to most medications. You're not fighting age, you're fighting an unresolved signal. To understand the impact, let's travel deeper, into the molecular battlefield. When lectins from tomatoes or potatoes reach the gut, they attach to carbohydrate molecules on intestinal cells, prying open tight junctions. These junctions are like gatekeepers, regulating what passes from your intestines into your bloodstream. When they open too far, bacteria fragments, food proteins, and toxins seep through. The immune system detects these foreign molecules and activates, releasing antibodies and inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein and tumor necrosis factor alpha. These molecules don't stay confined to the gut. They circulate, searching for tissues that share similar molecular patterns. And because joint cartilage proteins like collagen type 2 resemble some plant lectin structures, the immune system mistakes your joints for invaders. It's a tragic case of mistaken identity, one that leads to chronic pain. Now, picture what happens when oxalates enter the story. After digestion, oxalates combine with calcium and form insoluble crystals. These crystals circulate through the blood and lodge in tissues where circulation is slowest, particularly the joints, kidneys, and tendons. Under a microscope, they appear as sharp glass-like needles. When they settle in the synovial membrane, they pierce tiny holes into the surrounding tissue. The immune system senses damage and sends macrophages, the body's cleanup crew, to engulf them. But oxalate crystals can't be digested, so the macrophages die in the process, spilling inflammatory chemicals that attract even more immune cells. This chain reaction keeps repeating. Over time, the joint becomes a battlefield, swollen, sore, and deprived of oxygen. You might notice the pain most when climbing stairs or rising from a chair, because that's when pressure inside the joint pushes against these inflamed membranes. Science shows that even microscopic deposits can cause disproportionate pain. The nerves in your joints are hypersensitive to changes in inflammation and pressure, so even a small increase in fluid or irritation can feel magnified. That's why pain often seems worse than what X-rays reveal, because inflammation doesn't always show up on scans. It's biochemical, not structural. You could have perfect bone alignment, but still feel intense discomfort if your joints are inflamed from the inside. Let's consider what's happening to your cartilage during all this. Cartilage is made of a dense network of collagen fibers filled with proteoglycans, molecules that attract and retain water, giving it that smooth, slippery texture. Inflammation destroys both. The enzymes released by immune cells, called matrix metalloproteinases, literally digest cartilage. They dissolve the collagen framework and release fragments into the joint fluid. These fragments, in turn, act as new inflammatory triggers feeding the cycle. The more damage occurs, the more inflammation follows. The more inflammation follows, the more damage occurs. It's self-perpetuating. That's why joint diseases often accelerate. What feels like sudden deterioration is usually years of cumulative inflammation reaching a tipping point. As this process unfolds, the surrounding muscles begin to tighten as a protective mechanism. The body tries to shield the joint by restricting movement. You feel this as stiffness or reduced range of motion. Over time, that stiffness becomes habitual. The joint loses lubrication, motion becomes rough, and cartilage thins even faster. It's a domino effect that all begins with what enters your body through food. One of the most overlooked aspects of this process is circulation. Joints, particularly those in the knees and hips, have limited blood flow. That's why healing there takes longer. When chronic inflammation reduces microcirculation even further, nutrient delivery to cartilage drops dramatically. Less oxygen, less glucose, less repair. Meanwhile, toxins and inflammatory debris accumulate. The joint becomes like a stagnant pond, once clear and fluid, now murky and slow. Every step sends ripples of discomfort through that stagnation. And yet, because it's gradual, most people don't notice until the symptoms interfere with their independence, when they can't garden, walk long distances, or climb stairs without pain. It doesn't happen overnight, but it always begins quietly. Now imagine this happening across multiple joints at once. For some it starts in the knees, for others the fingers or shoulders. The pattern depends on which areas experience the most mechanical stress combined with the most inflammation. The result, though, is the same, a constant sense that your body is heavier, slower, less cooperative than before. What's really happening is that your immune system, tired of fighting invisible enemies from food, begins to drain your energy. Chronic inflammation diverts resources away from repair, muscle strength, and hormone balance. That's why joint pain rarely exists alone. It's often accompanied by fatigue, mental fog, mood swings, and sleep disturbances. The entire body is participating in a war it was never meant to fight. Now let's bring in another hidden factor, oxidative stress. Every inflammatory event releases free radicals, unstable molecules that damage cells. Normally, antioxidants from your diet neutralize them. But when inflammation is chronic, the demand exceeds supply. The cartilage cells, or chondrocytes, become surrounded by oxidative molecules that degrade their DNA and impair their ability to reproduce. This is why aging cartilage doesn't heal. Its cellular machinery has been oxidized into silence. And because many of these problematic vegetables increase oxidative stress through compounds like solanine or oxalate, the effect compounds over time. It's like a slow acid drip, wearing away the foundation of your mobility. There's also the nerve connection, something few people understand until they feel it. Chronic joint inflammation changes how your nerves interpret pain. Over time, they become hypersensitive, a process called central sensitization. This means your brain begins to perceive pain more intensely, even from minor irritation. So, after years of eating inflammatory foods, even small triggers, like walking on a cold morning or sitting too long, can cause outsized pain. The threshold for discomfort lowers. It's why older adults often describe joint pain that comes out of nowhere, or hurts even when I rest. The pain is no longer purely mechanical, it's neurological. The inflammation has literally rewired your body's pain perception, and yet there's something profoundly hopeful about understanding this. Because once you know that the pain is not inevitable, that it's driven by reversible chemistry, the control shifts back to you. Every inflammatory molecule that entered your body did so through choice, not fate, which means every healing molecule can too. The same gut that absorbed lectins and oxalates can heal. The same immune system that overreacted can learn calm. The same cartilage that suffered can be supported. The process of degeneration can slow, and in some cases, partially reverse. Before we talk about relief, let's trace one more hidden impact, the hormone connection. After 50, hormonal shifts, particularly in estrogen and testosterone, alter how your joints respond to inflammation. Estrogen helps maintain cartilage and reduces the production of inflammatory cytokines. When it declines, inflammation gains an advantage. That's why postmenopausal women often experience sudden joint pain flare-ups. Now imagine adding dietary lectins and oxalates to an already vulnerable system. It's like pouring gasoline on a spark. Similarly, cortisol, your body's stress hormone, rises with chronic pain, suppressing your natural anti-inflammatory pathways. This creates a feedback loop between stress, diet, and joint deterioration. Emotional stress and dietary inflammation are twins, each feeding the other, each amplifying pain. The connection between the gut and the brain also plays a crucial role. Chronic inflammation in the gut from these vegetables disrupts the vagus nerve, the communication highway between your brain and internal organs. When this nerve becomes overstimulated by inflammatory signals, it affects not just digestion, but also mood and pain perception. That's why joint inflammation is often accompanied by anxiety or low mood. They share the same biochemical roots. It's not just in your head, it's in your chemistry. Now, imagine if you could see inside the body of someone over 50 who eats inflammatory vegetables daily. The bloodstream would show elevated C-reactive protein. The joints would appear swollen with excess synovial fluid. The cartilage surface, once glossy and smooth, would look uneven under magnification, small erosions like waves carving into stone. The surrounding fat tissue would be inflamed too, secreting adipokines, inflammatory hormones that make the situation worse. Even the bones would start responding, thickening and hardening in a process called sclerosis, a desperate attempt to stabilize a damaged joint. The whole system adapts to chronic irritation, and yet because the body is remarkably resilient, it keeps functioning, until one day it doesn't. That's when mobility drops suddenly, when pain becomes constant, when the joy of movement fades into caution. But here's what most people miss. This damage is not destiny, it's feedback. Every symptom, the stiffness, ache, cracking, is your body speaking. And if you listen, if you make the right changes, it responds quickly. Studies show that markers of inflammation drop within weeks of removing irritant foods. The body wants to heal. The moment the chemical triggers are gone, the immune system begins to reset. The gut lining closes its microscopic leaks. Cytokine levels fall. Synovial membranes calm. Pain begins to ease, not because of pills, but because the fire has lost its fuel. That's the power of understanding impact. Once you see what's really happening inside, you stop fearing your body and start working with it. There's also a visual metaphor that captures it perfectly. Think of your joints as windows. Over time, they collect dust, small particles from the air, invisible at first. You don't notice until the light begins to dim. The vegetables we've discussed, the ones high in inflammatory compounds, add that dust daily. You can't stop it by polishing harder or pretending it's clean. You must stop the dust from entering in the first place. That's the path forward. Not endless cleaning, but prevention. The moment you close the window to inflammation, clarity returns. And clarity is exactly what we'll find next, the turning point. Because after understanding what's been happening inside, the natural question becomes, how do you reverse it? What can you eat, drink, or do daily to rebuild the health of your joints and restore mobility? The good news is that the body is astonishingly forgiving when given the right support. The next phase will bring that hope to light, the practical, evidence-backed steps that help your joints recover from years of silent inflammation. There comes a point when awareness turns into action, when fear transforms into clarity, when you realize that your pain is not a punishment, but a message. The moment you understand that your joints aren't breaking down because you're old, but because they're inflamed, and that inflammation is something you can influence, everything changes. That's the turning point, the quiet moment when you stop treating symptoms and start treating causes. And in this moment, your body begins to heal. Relief doesn't begin with a pill. It begins with understanding what your body truly wants. After 50, the body asks for gentleness, for foods that calm, cleanse, and rebuild. It no longer tolerates constant stimulation, chemical irritation, or inflammatory compounds disguised as health trends. What it craves is stability. When you give it that, the changes come faster than you imagine. The first step is to silence the internal fire. The inflammation that has been roaring beneath your awareness can be soothed within weeks if you stop feeding it. That means removing the most common triggers, nightshades like tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, and peppers, oxalate-heavy greens like spinach and beet leaves, and lectin-dense legumes and soy. Not forever, just long enough to let your immune system reset. Think of it as a gentle retreat for your body, a time for repair. When these irritants leave your diet, the immune system stops mistaking your joints for invaders. Cytokines drop, synovial membranes calm, the fog that dulled your energy begins to lift. It's not magic, it's physiology reclaiming balance. But here's the key. You can't just remove, you must replace. Because the body heals not through absence but through nourishment. For every food that causes inflammation, there's another that fights it. For every chemical that stiffens the joints, there's a compound that lubricates them. When you know how to pair them, the results feel almost miraculous. Start with color. Not the bright artificial reds of peppers and tomatoes, but the earthy tones of nature's true medicine. Steamed zucchini, cauliflower, broccoli, and carrots are gentle on the gut and rich in anti-inflammatory phytonutrients. Their fibers feed the beneficial bacteria in your intestines, the same bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, compounds proven to lower joint inflammation. Within days of shifting to these foods, your gut barrier begins to strengthen. The leaks close, the immune system relaxes, the war ends. Then comes the power of omega-3s, nature's anti-inflammatory warriors. Found in cold water fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel, omega-3 fatty acids compete with inflammatory omega-6s in your cell membranes. They literally crowd them out, changing the very chemistry of your body's inflammation response. If you don't eat fish, flaxseed and chia seed can help, though they convert less efficiently. The goal is consistency. Within weeks, omega-3s begin reshaping the lipid layers of your cells, making them more flexible, more resilient, less reactive. It's like oiling the hinges of a door that's been squeaking for years. Next, the importance of antioxidants cannot be overstated. Inflammation produces oxidative stress, those rogue free radicals that damage cartilage and slow healing. Antioxidants neutralize them. Blueberries, raspberries, green tea, and even small amounts of dark chocolate can become allies. But the most powerful source of all is found in turmeric, specifically its active compound, curcumin. Curcumin has been shown in countless studies to inhibit NF-κB, the molecular switch that turns on inflammation genes. Taken with a pinch of black pepper to increase absorption, it becomes one of nature's most potent natural pain relievers. Many patients who transition to an anti-inflammatory diet notice that within weeks of consistent curcumin use, their need for pain medication drops dramatically. They move easier, sleep deeper, wake lighter. Now let's talk about hydration, the most underrated healer of all. Joints are 70% water. The synovial fluid that lubricates your knees, hips, and shoulders depends on proper hydration to stay viscous. Yet most adults over 50 live in a state of mild dehydration, drinking coffee, tea, or alcohol instead of pure water. Without enough fluid, that synovial fluid thickens, circulation slows, and waste removal stalls. To the joints, that feels like friction, literal grinding. You don't need to drink gallons, but you do need consistency. Sipping water throughout the day keeps your cartilage hydrated, your blood alkaline, and your detox pathways open. Even mild rehydration can reduce pain intensity within days. It's that fundamental. Then there's movement. Not exercise for vanity or punishment, but movement for healing. When joints hurt, the natural instinct is to rest, but immobility starves cartilage of nutrients. Movement is what circulates synovial fluid, the liquid that feeds your cartilage cells. Gentle motion is medicine. Walking, swimming, yoga, or tai chi, these aren't just physical activities. They're acts of lubrication. Every step is like stirring a pot, redistributing nutrients and removing waste. Done daily, this kind of movement tells the body, we're still alive, keep the system flowing. That signal alone triggers healing responses at the cellular level. It's how you turn pain into recovery. Now, diet and movement are the twin pillars, but the third, often ignored, is gut repair. Because if the inflammation began there, that's where it must end. After removing lectin and oxalate-rich vegetables, the gut needs help rebuilding its barrier. Bone broth, rich in collagen and amino acids like glycine and proline, provides the raw material for repairing the gut lining. Fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, or kefir reintroduce beneficial bacteria that regulate the immune system. L-glutamine, an amino acid supplement, can accelerate healing of the intestinal wall. Within weeks, as the gut seals, immune confusion declines. Those antibodies that once attacked your joints begin to quiet, and with that quiet, the pain subsides. It's not just physical, it's emotional too. Chronic inflammation affects mood and energy, making it harder to believe in recovery. But when you start supporting your biology, your psychology follows. The fog clears, the fatigue fades. You begin to feel that sense of vitality again, that quiet hum of well-being that tells you your body is finally at peace. Many people over 50 describe it not as feeling young again, but as feeling clear. The absence of pain becomes a form of clarity. That's the relief phase, not a sudden transformation, but a gradual awakening. What's beautiful about this approach is that it's not restrictive, it's restorative. You're not depriving yourself. You're liberating your body from the foods that never truly served it. The meals become simpler, more intentional. A bowl of steamed vegetables drizzled with olive oil, a piece of grilled salmon, a cup of herbal tea. These aren't sacrifices, they're medicine disguised as comfort. Within them are the nutrients your cells have been waiting for. Magnesium to relax your muscles, potassium to balance your fluids, vitamin K2 to guide calcium away from your joints and into your bones where it belongs. One of the greatest allies in joint relief is magnesium, often overlooked yet essential for over 300 biochemical reactions. It relaxes muscles, lowers inflammation, and prevents calcium buildup in soft tissues. After 50, magnesium deficiency becomes common due to reduced absorption. That's why incorporating magnesium-rich foods like avocados, pumpkin seeds, and leafy greens like kale, not spinach, is crucial. Or supplementing with magnesium glycinate, a gentle form that doesn't irritate the stomach. Many notice that when magnesium levels rise, stiffness diminishes. Muscles stop tensing around inflamed joints, creating space for healing. And speaking of calcium, it's not about consuming more, but directing it properly. Calcium misplaced in the joints is what causes stiffness. Vitamin K2 acts as the traffic controller, ensuring calcium integrates into bone instead of soft tissue. Combined with vitamin D, it supports bone density without calcifying your cartilage. That's the kind of precision the body needs, not random supplementation, but harmony. Relief also comes from timing. When you eat matters almost as much as what you eat. Late-night meals force your body to digest instead of repair. After 50, that trade-off becomes costly. The digestive system slows in the evening, meaning inflammatory compounds linger longer. By finishing dinner a few hours before sleep, you give your body time to focus on restoration. Overnight, inflammation markers drop, growth hormone rises, and the joints detoxify. Sleep becomes not just rest, but therapy. Temperature therapy can help too. Alternating warm and cold compresses on sore joints improves circulation and reduces swelling. Warmth expands blood vessels, delivering oxygen. Cold constricts them, reducing inflammation. The alternation mimics the body's natural repair rhythm. Many people find this simple routine, 10 minutes warm, 10 minutes cold, more effective than medication. It's the body's way of reminding you that relief doesn't always come from outside sources. Sometimes, it's as simple as working with your own physiology. But perhaps the most overlooked form of relief is emotional. Chronic inflammation feeds on stress. Every time you worry, your adrenal glands release cortisol, a hormone that, in small amounts, controls inflammation, but in excess suppresses healing. Meditation, deep breathing, and even gratitude journaling may sound unrelated to joint pain, yet they directly lower inflammatory markers in the blood. When your mind calms, your immune system follows. Stress management isn't a luxury, it's medicine. Many patients describe a moment, usually after a few weeks of these changes, when they wake up and realize something's different. The morning stiffness that once defined their days is gone. Their hands feel lighter. Their knees no longer resist movement. The pain didn't vanish overnight. It simply faded layer by layer as the body reclaimed balance. That's the miracle of biology. It always seeks equilibrium. All you have to do is stop interrupting it. If you could look inside your body during this phase, you'd see healing in motion. The synovial membranes that once swelled are now calm and smooth. The fluid between your joints has regained its clarity. The immune cells have retreated, resting instead of attacking. The cartilage, once under siege, is absorbing nutrients again. And you, the person who once believed that pain was inevitable, are beginning to trust your body again. The greatest gift of this relief phase isn't just less pain, it's the return of trust. Trust that your body knows how to heal, Trust that it responds to care. Trust that aging doesn't have to mean suffering. That trust becomes the foundation of the next phase, empowerment, where the focus shifts from healing to thriving. Because once you've calmed the fire, you can begin to build resilience. You can strengthen what remains, nourish what grows, and live without fear of pain returning. This is where healing transforms into vitality, where diet turns into lifestyle, where food stops being the enemy and becomes your ally again. Because relief isn't just about comfort, it's the beginning of freedom. There's a moment somewhere between pain and peace when you realize that healing isn't about returning to who you were. It's about becoming someone new, someone aware, deliberate, and in tune with their body. For most people, that realization comes quietly. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or applause. It begins on an ordinary morning when you stand up and notice that your knees don't ache like they used to, or when your hands, once stiff, close easily around a cup of coffee. That moment, small, personal, almost sacred, is the first taste of empowerment. It's your body whispering, "See, I can still heal." Empowerment, at its core, is about partnership. You and your body working together again. For years, maybe decades, you've been taught that aging is a loss, a slow surrender of mobility, strength, and vitality. But what you're learning now is that aging is adaptation. The body isn't decaying, it's changing. And those changes, once understood, can be supported rather than feared. The stiffness, the fatigue, the aches, they're signals, not punishments. And when you start listening instead of suppressing, you take control of the narrative. Imagine life not defined by what you can't do, but by what you can still become. That's what happens when inflammation no longer dictates your days. Your energy returns, your clarity sharpens, your confidence grows. You start moving more because it feels good again, not because you're forcing yourself. You rediscover things you thought you had lost, the ability to kneel in the garden, to walk upstairs without holding the rail, to stretch your arms overhead without hesitation. These simple movements, once painful, now feel like acts of gratitude. Every step becomes proof that your efforts mattered. But empowerment isn't just about the body, it's about the mindset that sustains it. Healing gives you the chance to rebuild more than your joints. It lets you rebuild your relationship with food, with aging, with self-care. You begin to understand that health isn't built in moments of discipline, but in moments of awareness. When you pause before eating and ask, "Will this nourish me or inflame me?" That's awareness. When you choose rest instead of pushing through exhaustion, that's awareness. When you celebrate progress instead of perfection, that's awareness. And it's that awareness repeated daily that becomes strength. Over 50, your body becomes more honest. It no longer hides the consequences of your choices. Every decision shows up somewhere, in your energy, in your skin, in your joints. But that honesty is a gift. It's immediate feedback that allows you to adjust quickly. When you eat something that doesn't serve you, your body tells you. When you find what works, it rewards you with lightness, calm, and clarity. Living with that kind of awareness turns health into something sacred. Not a chore, not a trend, but a partnership with time itself. The vegetables that once caused pain no longer hold power over you. You know their nature now, their chemistry, their potential for harm, their triggers. But you also know how to prepare, how to balance, how to listen. Maybe one day, after your gut has healed, you'll reintroduce some of them carefully, peeled, cooked, and seasoned with understanding. And when you do, you'll do it with wisdom, not fear. Because empowerment is not about avoidance. It's about choice. You are no longer reacting, you are responding. That distinction between reaction and response is what separates those who merely manage their pain from those who master their health. When you react, you chase symptoms. When you respond, you anticipate them. You live proactively, not defensively. You learn to read the signals of inflammation before they become pain. A restless night, a slight puffiness in the hands, a heaviness in the knees. Instead of ignoring them, you adjust. More hydration, lighter meals, extra rest. That's how you stay ahead of decline. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present. As weeks turn into months, something remarkable begins to happen. You no longer think about pain every day. You move through your routine with ease. You find yourself doing things you avoided, gardening, long walks, kneeling, dancing. The body that once resisted motion now welcomes it. It's as if your joints remember what freedom feels like. And with every movement, the memory strengthens. This is the body's wisdom at work, a kind of biological gratitude that rewards care with vitality. You start to see that health isn't a destination, it's a rhythm. Some days strong, some days gentle. Some meals indulgent, others precise. What matters is the pattern, the consistency of awareness. Because consistency builds trust. Your body begins to trust you again. It stops guarding, stops reacting, stops flaring. It softens. And in that softness there's healing. People may start to notice changes. They'll ask if you've lost weight, if you're sleeping better, if you've found a new routine. But what they're really seeing is inflammation leaving your face, tension leaving your posture, fatigue leaving your eyes. They're seeing vitality return, not from supplements or shortcuts, but from the quiet, disciplined care you've given yourself. That kind of vitality can't be faked. It's something deeper, something earned. Now that your inflammation is quiet, your body enters a new chapter, maintenance and growth. Here the goal shifts from relief to resilience. This is where you build a foundation strong enough to carry you for decades. Foods that heal become habits that last. Mornings begin with hydration, not coffee. Meals become simpler, more intuitive. You crave calm, not chaos. You walk daily not to burn calories, but to circulate life. The small routines become rituals of gratitude, because when you've felt what pain can take from you, every pain-free day feels like grace. And if pain does return, as it sometimes will, you won't panic. You'll recognize it as feedback, not failure. You'll know exactly what to adjust, and you'll do it without fear. That's real control. The kind that comes not from never falling, but from knowing how to rise calmly each time. Your health becomes less fragile, more adaptive. You begin to see aging itself differently, not as a decline, but as a refinement. The unnecessary falls away. What remains is wisdom. There's an old saying, the body keeps the score. It's true. Every choice you've made, every habit you've formed, leaves its imprint. But what most people forget is that the body also keeps records of healing. Every time you choose calm over stress, water over soda, rest over worry, your body writes it down in the language of recovery. Lower inflammation, steadier hormones, stronger joints. Healing has a memory too, and the more you feed it, the more it remembers how to thrive. Think about how different your future looks now. The stairs no longer intimidate you. Long walks feel inviting again. You look forward to mornings instead of dreading them. The foods you eat nourish instead of harm. And beneath it all, there's a new confidence, not the loud, youthful kind that comes from appearance, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing you've taken responsibility for your body. That's the essence of empowerment, calm strength rooted in awareness. You've learned that medicine is not always found in a bottle. It's in the choices you make every day. It's in how you eat, move, breathe, and rest. It's in how you manage stress, in how you treat your gut, and in how you speak to yourself. You've discovered that pain can be a teacher. It taught you patience, humility, and curiosity. It forced you to slow down long enough to hear what your body had been trying to say for years. And in listening, you healed not just physically, but emotionally. That's the beautiful irony of healing. It often gives you more than it takes. Yes, it asks for discipline, but it gives back freedom. It asks for awareness, but it gives back clarity. It asks you to slow down. But in doing so, it returns your vitality. And now, as you move forward, you realize something profound. Your health isn't just your own. It's a ripple effect. When you move better, you live better. And when you live better, everyone around you feels it. Your family, your friends, your community. You become a living example of what's possible when knowledge meets action. That's the true legacy of empowerment. It's not about perfection. It's about influence. The quiet kind that comes from living your truth. When others see you thriving, not by chasing trends, but by trusting your body, they'll ask how. And you'll tell them what few ever realize, that the key to healing was never something external. It was awareness, the willingness to question what you've been told, to experiment with care, to listen to your body like it's your oldest friend. Because it is. The vegetables that once harmed you now serve as a reminder, not of fear, but of transformation. They represent a turning point. You learned how to separate good intentions from good outcomes. You learned that health advice isn't universal, that what works for one may hurt another. You learned that your body is unique, complex, responsive, alive. And that understanding will guide you far beyond joint health. It will influence every area of your life, from how you handle stress, to how you eat, to how you rest. Because once you've learned to listen to your body's whispers, you'll never need to hear its screams again. In this new phase, your focus shifts from managing pain to cultivating vitality. That means maintaining the habits that brought you here, but doing so with ease, not effort. You no longer need rigid plans or strict diets. You've internalized the rhythm. Eat whole, move daily, rest deeply, think calmly. Let your meals be colorful, your days balanced, your thoughts kind. That's the formula for longevity, not complexity, but consistency. As you move through your 50s, 60s and beyond, your health won't just sustain you, it will elevate you. The clarity in your mind, the steadiness in your step, the lightness in your joints, they'll remind you every day that you've taken control of your narrative. You'll wake with purpose, move with confidence, and rest with peace, because you'll know that your health is no longer something that happens to you. It is something you create. This is the moment when knowledge becomes legacy, when awareness becomes wisdom, when your story becomes proof that change is possible at any age. The vegetables that once destroyed your joints no longer define your story. You do. You turned information into transformation. You turned pain into partnership. You turned aging into art. That's what empowerment feels like. Quiet mastery over your own biology, and perhaps the greatest truth of all, the one medicine rarely teaches, is this. The human body doesn't age in years. It ages in inflammation. Reduce the inflammation, and you reduce time's grip. Every calm day, every nourishing meal, every deep breath, every stretch, every good night's sleep, they all buy you time. Not just years of life, but life in those years. That's the gift you've earned. So as you move forward, remember, your body is not your enemy. It's your oldest ally. Treat it with respect, and it will carry you with grace. Feed it what calms it. Move it in ways that honor it. Rest it when it asks and listen when it speaks. That's how you age with vitality. That's how you turn healing into power. And when someone asks you what changed, you'll smile and say, I stopped fighting my body, I started listening. That's the moment you'll know. You didn't just relieve your pain, you reclaimed your life.